Welcome all our friends to another SAMexpert event dedicated to service providers of all kinds and everyone around the hosting, data center and SaaS industry. It's always nice to see familiar faces, and if you're new, you're most welcome to join us today. My name is Golev, and I'm a senior partner in a boutique business management consultancy that is called SAMexpert. The rather pretentious tagline of today's event is building a fortress of compliance. So what is it about? It's about being always prepared for a compliance audit conducted by Microsoft and potentially even being able to prevent it entirely. So our senior partners, including Daryl, that is currently with me on the event, and I personally, we have been around Microsoft vendor management and audit defense for over 20 years. Some people get less for murder. So each of us has been around this for 20 plus years. And during these years, we have defended organizations through over 100 audits. And it's always the same story. It's consistently the same comments from service providers. Why are they auditing us? It's not the right time. How do we do it right? How do we gather data? What data? Why are they asking for billing records? Why is the penalty so high, ultimately? We're honest people. We follow the rules. All the providers we defend that are honest people, they follow the rules as much as they can, but obviously they have knowledge gaps. And ultimately, why is the penalty so high? What went wrong? And I don't have to tell you that it's an obvious management conclusion that it's always better to have a proactive system, some kind of an operating model that takes care of contractual compliance daily, as opposed to reacting to such an event unprepared. It's obvious. I probably don't have to explain it to you. And the problem, let's be honest, the problem is that licensing compliance is not even among the top 10 priorities of service providers. You're in business. You're making money. We regularly talk to our clients, we monitor the market, and we send questionnaires, ask people their opinion. And the only time licensing reached the top 10 was at the beginning of 2024 with the Broadcom VMware acquisition shenanigans. Plus, obviously, licensing is complicated and it's a headache. It's a pain in the lower back. So what we want to do today is we want to help you overcome that. We want to give you a relatively easy. It's not very easy. I don't want to set wrong expectations here, but a relatively easy, tried and tested system that we help other providers to implement. So you can just stick to it. You can start building your own system based on our recommendations. And we have actually been implementing and polishing the system already for a few years with some of our key clients. And we've been learning from real-life obstacles and mistakes, not only in audits, but actually in trying to implement this system and these processes. There are obstacles. There are problems. That's why today we're giving you the simplest, the basic, the core steps, which will help you build a system like this. And by the way, if you are interested in an audit readiness cheat sheet or a checklist, please drop us an email at ask@samexpert.com and we'll send you one. We'll send you a copy. Now, let's finally dive in and let me walk you through the foundational steps of the audit readiness and prevention system. And I'll tell you why, how it can help you prevent an audit. Because we often say that it's almost unavoidable. There are ways. There are certain buttons you can push to try and cancel an audit before it started. The first and foremost step, this is my personal mantra. It's just so successful that I just stick to it. The first and foremost step is to get to know yourselves. You need to first classify your services. As obvious as it sounds, we find that more often than not, we find that providers have rather limited knowledge about themselves. And please don't take it wrong, please don't get offended, I'll explain now. We find that hosting and SaaS companies are rather good at building and supporting the services and selling them. So you're good at that. It's your business. You're selling services. Your sales process is very good. What's going on in the background then? It's not always precisely clear, especially when you develop new services, when you roll something out, where your key customer came and asked you for something unusual that you don't usually provide, and because you wanted to keep the customer, you decided to provide this service to them, then you get a new service. And when it comes to compliance, there may be that good high-level knowledge of what's going on, but it's not detailed enough to be in a good audit readiness position, in a fully compliant position, and especially when you want to prevent an audit. And what you need to firstly do, this is the first step. Before we talk about data and tools and scripts and other things, document all the types of services you provide. Which types of services? Let me give you a few examples. Dedicated hosting, also known as colocation, aka single-tenant hosting, aka private cloud. There may be subtypes depending on who provides the hardware, who provides the licenses, and especially what licenses. And we recommend treating each of these subtypes as a separate type of service. You will need it, I'll explain. The other big type is shared hosting, aka multi-tenant hosting, aka public cloud. And shared hosting can also have subtypes, and the most popular divide is between managed and unmanaged clients. And by managed, I mean where you also provide system administration, IT outsourcing services, where you have access inside the operating systems, inside the end client's domain, where you probably even co-manage that. That could be another, by the way, service. There may be a service where you fully manage it. There may be a service where you co-manage it. We recommend you writing that down as separate types of services you provide. And the opposite of that is unmanaged clients, where you have no access to any of their virtual machines whatsoever. No access. They rent virtual machines from you. You provide no services. You have no admin access. It's their sandbox. Another frequent example that is not strictly compliant with the rules of SPLA, but unfortunately, to be honest, because it's not strictly compliant with the rules of SPLA, it's when you have a client for whom you provide SPLA licenses, but you have no access to their virtual machine. So you don't really know whether they have enough SPLA licenses, what they're actually running in those machines. It is a scenario. And if you have clients like this, write it down. We're not talking about particular clients right now. We're just writing all types of services you provide, so you get to know yourselves. SaaS hosting is a fun one, and there are a few also frequently used scenarios. The first one is you are a SaaS company with your own data center, or you're renting a rack space somewhere. You co-locate your services somewhere. You own the IP. This is the first scenario where you own the IP. This is your application. You developed it and you host it in a dedicated environment. And there are no other services in that environment except your own SaaS. Surprisingly, it's not well known that you don't need SPLA for it. You may opt for SPLA. You may opt for so-called self-hosted volume licenses. And not everybody knows about it. And it could be a significant financial tool. It could be a significant tool to reduce license costs if you use your own licenses, volume licenses. So it's not necessarily SPLA, could be a mix. The other one is if it's still your own SaaS environment, but you license the applications or their components. Microsoft strictly says if anything is licensed from a third party, it's not your SaaS application, then it's not self-hosted. You need to use SPLA. You don't own the IP. And another example, yesterday I spoke to a provider which exclusively hosts dedicated environments for other SaaS providers. That's an interesting one. It could be quite complicated. Last but not least, some providers, especially the big ones, especially massive outsourcers for governments, they can provide full business process outsourcing services. And what is a BPO? It's effectively where end clients have no access to these systems, or they may have access, but only to some kind of web dashboards. For example, it may be a fully outsourced call center. And here, types of services can also branch into BPOs running on dedicated hardware or hosted in the public cloud environment. There may be different licensing scenarios, different licensing requirements. That's why you need to document those services as separate services. Why are we doing all this? Some of them may be out of scope of SPLA. Some of them may have different bring your own license requirements. And that's when you face an audit, you already know what environments you're responsible for and what details you're responsible for. Recently as well, providers began building new cloud environments specifically for so-called CSP hosting licenses. Strictly speaking, it's not a separate hosting scenario. However, because it's a different licensing scenario, we consider it being a different kind of service from the licensing, from the billing, and from the management points of view. So it deserves its own entry in the list of your services. Please write it down. Go really granular. Write them all down. Every service, every option that you have. You need to know yourselves, and this is your first step. And since we're not talking today about a one-off exercise when you get an audit, no, we're talking about you being ready for any such event. You're trying to make your life easier if this happens. And also, the other outcome of everything that we're talking today about is you improve your financial stability. You get more transparency around everything that happens in the background of your service provider business. Review this list on a regular basis, at least once a year. If you are a rapidly changing organization, it could be a quarterly review, it could be a monthly review. Quarterly is the right balance, I would put it this way. Then your next step, when you have the list of services, is then to diagram your entire infrastructure. And when I say entire is a key word. You must leave no stones unturned, not even a single thing, not even a single cluster. Ask your IT department to generate a complete list of all locations, data centers, environments, and clusters. This is based on our experience. This is how we do it. Then for each cluster, assign types of provided services. Remember, you just built a list of services. So then for each cluster, write down this cluster is used for a dedicated client that brings their own licenses except for operating systems. This is how granular you must go with each cluster. When it's dedicated, you need to write down the names of hosted end clients. You need to know that this cluster belongs to one client and that is the client's name. And depending on how much change happens monthly in your estate, this exercise should be performed at least quarterly. And in some cases, even monthly, especially during substantial modifications and migrations you deploy a new cluster, it needs to be immediately dropped on that list and it must be immediately managed. Think about it as a high-level CMDB of all your clusters. You need to know that. That is the least about the infrastructure. The next more in-depth step, which you may skip at the beginning, but you need to do it as well, is you need to have a database, a CMDB, where also each virtual machine is clearly assigned to either internal use or demo or trial or an end client. So that is your target level of granularity, but you need to start with the clusters because that's where the main problems occur, not having a defined scope. When you've done that, you compile a list of your end clients. You probably have a CRM, you probably have some sales systems. Don't invent something new. Use the existing systems. Use the system that you use to manage all your client relationships. What you need to write down is all the compliance-related details against every client. What do you need to track? Again, I'm simplifying it. I'm giving you the basics. First of all, the type of end-user agreement. Shortly, what I mean is whether they accept online terms and conditions. There will be a service start date, so you probably can infer what version of your terms and conditions they signed. Why? Because when they sign terms and conditions, they accept a particular language in that terms and conditions. And if you have indemnity clauses, them indemnifying you from, say, Microsoft's compliance claims when they are responsible for their software, it needs to be in the terms and conditions. So you need to know what terms and conditions they signed. Why are we saying this? In an audit, if you start defending yourselves from those claims, auditors will demand you to provide evidence that client signed a specific terms and conditions, and they will ask you for the particular text. So you need to know for each client what they signed. If they have a custom agreement, you need to know that they signed a custom agreement. If it's a standard services agreement, but not an online terms and conditions, and again, just have it somewhere in writing in your CRM. You will need it to defend yourselves. And the more information you have up front, the more you manage on a daily basis, the less headache it'll be during an audit. Whether the client is managed or unmanaged, obviously. Whether you manage that client or you provide them unmanaged machines, obviously, big difference. Key milestones, service start and end date, demo and trial access periods, go live dates, and last but not least, the licenses you provide to them exactly, and plus written evidence that they accepted their licensing responsibility for what you don't provide to them up front. It's one of the longest and most painful exercises during an audit to try and find that evidence in a hurry, being nervous about the ongoing audit. So have that up front. This should be part of your daily operations of your systems. And yes, this is all additional burden on a daily basis, but you decided to host Microsoft software, unfortunately, and I'm not defending Microsoft. By no means I'm defending Microsoft here. You accepted the terms and conditions. Just follow them. This list may require monthly reviews because clients ask for new services. They may deploy new software. They may place an order for switching from unmanaged to managed state. Things change. And it's better if you update it, not even on a regular basis, reactively, but better that you modify your existing processes. I'm talking about basic processes that you have: pre-sale process, sale process, client onboarding process, change management, upsale, client offboarding when they're leaving, and more. Whichever processes you already have, if you have them, hopefully you have them, just make sure that whatever they change in compliance or may change in compliance is accurately reflected in your list of clients and change records. Let's go to another topic, which is quite interesting. So you've done all this. You have a list of your services, you have a list of your classes, you have a list of your clients with all those details. Let's talk about contractual compliance. There are items in SPLA and CSP hosting that either aren't related to licensing compliance entirely or affected indirectly. And first and foremost, SPLA demands that each end user signs the so-called end user license terms. You will not get a monetary penalty if they don't, but when they do, it's important that they do because it protects you. EULT is a PDF that Microsoft gives you with your SPLA agreement. It must be fully included in your terms of service, unmodified. Microsoft has language saying, at least the terms that are in the EULT, what we suggest is just put it in unmodified. This is our experience. Just don't change it. Just add it. as an appendix to your terms and conditions, so your standard master services agreement. And the ULT is important in at least the following aspects. First, it informs your end client that they must use Microsoft software compliantly. They sign it, so they accept that they must use Microsoft software compliantly. Helps you with potential disputes. It requires end clients to collaborate with you in the event of an audit. In writing, it requires them to collaborate with you. So don't overlook it. If there are three-way disputes between you, Microsoft, and an end client, who must pay for the license filed during an audit? It as a ULT, you can carefully point your finger at the end client. Obviously, you need to follow your own sales process, client relationship process, but you have that right contractually, which simplifies your position. So what you need to do as a one-off? Review all your end customer contracts and update them to include a copy of the ULT. And then for the regular process, there's no need to review them. Just update your sales and onboarding processes now to ensure that all the future clients sign an ULT either as an acceptance of the online terms and conditions or by actually putting the signature, e-signature or a wet signature under your master services agreement. There are a few more contractual requirements of SPLA that you need to follow. And again, to simplify your life in an audit or any verification event, we advise you to follow them. SPLA requires you to report details of end clients that consume over $1,000 per month. An interesting bit is, depending on the version of your SPLA, you may or may not, and please listen to me carefully, may or may not be required to also report their consumption per client via separate enrollments. For a few years, it was a requirement. Recently, the detailed reporting requirement with separate enrollments was dropped from SPLA. Not every reseller informed the providers that it's an old requirement and you don't have to follow it. So when you renewed your SPLA, if you renewed it this year especially, check the language. If it doesn't say that you must report separate consumption, that you may stop doing that. However, the requirement to report the details, the contact details of such clients still remains. So it's still in the SPLA. You just don't need to tell Microsoft exactly what licenses they consume. And you don't have to create separate audit forms. It actually reduces admin on your side. SPLA also requires you to track details of all demos, if you have a demo environment, and unpaid trial access. So if you provide unpaid trial access for your own clients, if you demonstrate your solutions, that is free of charge from the point of view of SPLA. You don't have to pay for those licenses. But how do you prove it? Microsoft actually requires you to have written evidence of such events with the details of your client. Read it in your SPLA. If you want those months to be free of charge for you, you just have to keep evidence. It's not rocket science. Just follow the process. Make sure that is, again, part of your day-to-day processes. This is not a regular review. It just needs to be ingrained in the actual process of providing a demo or providing an evaluation access. Then, if you are still a licensed mobility partner, there aren't that many. This is an outdated program. It makes no sense anymore. Don't renew it. Seriously, just don't, unless you're Amazon or Google. Contractually, you are still required to collect and keep license verification forms, unfortunately. If your partnership is still active and you allow BYOL, under the terms of the licensed mobility partnership, you need to follow the license verification process and keep the forms. And even if you dropped out of that program, if you get an audit, you will be asked for those forms. In your preparation, in your readiness exercise, we suggest collecting those forms for the previous years for all the clients as much as you can find and organize them and store them in a safe and secure place. Then if you're a CSP hoster, you're also required to verify the end client licenses and report some of the CSP hosted Microsoft products quarterly, as per the terms of Microsoft CSP hosting program. So as I said, make sure you update your processes to thoroughly follow all the above requirements and perform at least annual self-verification to ensure you do follow these requirements. And you may have inferred that bring your own license is a big deal. It is a big deal. It happens whether you allow it or not. It happens, especially when sysadmins are uninformed about compliance still. We are 2024 and people don't understand the consequences of deploying SQL Enterprise instead of SQL Standard. Bring your own license is a serious issue. And if you've been to our events or read our articles before, and if you're one of our consistent followers, you already know that according to Microsoft, a service provider, whether you like it or not, that's what they say, is responsible for every single bit of Microsoft software. Again, I'm not defending Microsoft. And probably if you try and rip apart the SPLA agreement and talk to your lawyers, they will tell you that in Europe, third-party responsibility like this won't stand in court. From the contractual point of view, this is how Microsoft puts it and this is how Microsoft treats it. You are responsible from the get-go before you provide any other evidence for every single bit of Microsoft software in your estate, in your hosting estate. If you already started following the suggestions that I have just given you, by this time you should already have a list of services and list of end clients. When you get to your BYOL, don't start with it. Start with exactly the process that I just laid out for you. But when you get to this stage, let's go a little bit deeper about BYOL. So here are a few licensing scenarios that could be, and it's a long list, that could include bring your own license or not. First of all, very simple. You provide all Microsoft licenses to the end client via SPLA. Lots of providers do that. Secondly, you provide all Microsoft licenses, all of them, via CSP hosting. Third scenario, you provide some of the licenses and you know what other licenses the client brings to your hosted infrastructure. Fourth scenario, you provide some of the licenses and you have no idea of what other licenses the client brings to your hosted infrastructure. You have no access to client's machines and provide no licenses at all. You have no access to the client's machines and provide only operating system licenses. You have no access to the client's machines that provide SPLA licenses at their request, which is not exactly compliant with the terms of SPLA. You have no access to the client's machines and provide CSP licenses at their request. It's a bit easier than SPLA, and any mix of the above. And to be honest, I wrote it down in probably 2 minutes, just remembering every single scenario from the last year in our experience. That is why it's imperative to track all licensing scenarios, especially complicated ones, per client in the end client register. Remember, I told you, you need to write down for each client what licensing scenarios you use with those end clients. And you may have derived by now from my words that this creates at least 2 management issues. The first one is clients to whose machines you have no access and therefore you can't control and verify what runs in them. And the second one is managing bring your own licenses in all these scenarios. Let's talk about no access to virtual machines. If you have no access to virtual machines, it creates a very serious hurdle during an audit because Microsoft will demand, and the auditors will echo that demand. They will channel it through. The demand that you scan all the virtual machines, regardless of whether you have access or not, regardless of what you agreed with your own client. We recently heard a verbal statement from Microsoft. It was verbal. It wasn't in writing. It wasn't through official communications that Microsoft have softened their stance. But because there's no written confirmation, I would suggest still assuming the worst, that you'll be asked to scan those virtual machines. Can you avoid that? Yes, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. What you need to do is you have to have a very compelling story, fully backed by written evidence, undisputable written evidence. Something, I call this a nuclear option, something they can't argue with. If it's a little bit vague, there'll be an argument. If it's just your verbal declaration, they'll just continue insisting. And this, by the way, may happen for years. We've seen this. For a few years, they will continue coming back and saying, have you already scanned the machines? And you would go back and say, but we have no access. And they will come back next month and say, have you already scanned the machines? And your only option here is to provide as much evidence of, firstly, you contractually, in your terms of service, having no access to those virtual machines whatsoever, even a backup admin account. And the end clients accepting full responsibility for whatever they deploy inside those virtual machines, fully indemnifying you from all the claims, recognizing in writing that you don't provide any extra licenses except for the operating system. Maybe not even an operating system if they bring CSP licenses. Again, you won't easily get away with a simple declaration of no access. You will have to provide a written confirmation. And if you follow all the advice that I've just given you about your end client register and client agreements, terms of service, change records, you should have all the written evidence ready. That's how you build it, by following the previous steps. And by the time of the audit, you'll have it and you will just provide it up front. Provide it up front. Tell it to them up front. Have it ready. This is your audit readiness process. It's not even an exercise. It's a process. And just to reiterate, don't expect it to be an easy argument, but you'll be in a much better position to defend yourselves if you follow this advice. Talking about manage and bring your own license, as I already mentioned, license mobility partners and CSP hosters have written BYOL requirements and guidelines from Microsoft. Just follow those guidelines. But what if you're neither? You're not a CSP hoster, you're not a license mobility partner. Then Microsoft doesn't require you to manage bring your own license. However, in an audit, you'll be in exactly the same situation as the authorized license mobility partners and CSP hosters. And you will need to provide evidence of separate licensing responsibility between you and your end clients. In the simplest form, it should define what licenses you provide exactly. In addition, we suggest you collecting evidence of end clients actually having eligible licenses, because auditors ask for it each time. And it's better to have it up front than search for it and ask for it during an audit. It's not a pleasant exercise. It's an arguable point, however, whether you must be like a day-to-day auditor of your end clients when it's not required by the contractual terms between you and Microsoft. But if you want to make your life easier in an audit, then politely require your end clients to inform you when they deploy Microsoft software you don't provide. It could be part of your terms and conditions, and to provide you with any reasonable form of evidence. You should do that. Relevant records are fun. This is a fun part that should also be followed. SPLA requires you to maintain so-called relevant records, and funny enough, it does not define them. It doesn't have them written in stone. They list examples, such as billing records, and it's better to have them, especially if you're in a dispute and you're disputing an end client that probably co-manages Active Directory with you, and that end client deploys something or increases the number of users authorized to access the service, and you don't have a tool that monitors that in real time, then in that case, if you bill them for a fixed number of licenses, and without you knowing, they increase the people that are authorized to access the system and you don't know about it, it may be your last line of defense. They didn't pay for it. We didn't bill them. We didn't know, and we didn't profiteer based on this. It's not like, dear Microsoft, we billed them for 3,000, but we only reported 100. There's a clear trace between what they paid for and what we reported to Microsoft. There's one element that we advise having organized in any circumstances in regards to so-called relevant records, and it should be the easiest step for any of you, for any service provider, regardless of the maturity of your current license management processes, and that is have your monthly SPLA reports and quarterly CSP hosting reports fully organized and backed up. Just have them all. And not only your reports. What we suggest keeping is the entire document trail, starting from the report, including PO if purchasing orders are included in your reporting process, and then invoices from the SPLA reseller. It's very important to keep them all, because we see instances when a provider would report consumption for September, and for any reasons, it gets lost in the email or in the systems of the SPLA reseller. If it's not fully automated, it requires manual interaction. And for some reason, it's attributed to October. And therefore, what will Microsoft see? That you reported 0 licenses in September. You can argue about it, but it will not be an easy argument. Don't expect it to be an easy one. And if you can prove that you reported at the right moment for the right month, then you're in a better place. So keep the entire document trail, and then for all of you, it'll probably be the easiest exercise to start collecting your relevant records right now. Inventory and tools. So we get to the data. Obviously, if you have your own dedicated tools that are specialized tools to manage SPLA and CSP hosting reporting, it's a good thing. First of all, if you trust the tool, if you maintain it on a regular basis, and this is what you need to do now, if you have a tool like this, make sure that you trust what's in the tool. And the question I use personally, and we use in our company, when we ask a client whether they trust the tool or not, they may say yes. But the next question is the best indication of whether they actually trust it or not. Do you use the tool as the last source of information for your end client billing? And then all kinds of questions arise. Oh, no, because we don't track this, we don't track that, we don't believe the Visual Studio numbers, we think the RDS numbers are too high, we forgot to exclude this or that. Then it basically means that you don't trust your tool. It's not fully managed. So make sure that when you're building this fortress of compliance, then you have a regular process of reviewing what's in the tool, that it actually corresponds to all your end client arrangements. Remember, we already have a list of clients, we already have a list of services, what they're responsible for, so you can put it in the tool. So then you will trust it to the point when end client billing would be just a push of a button in Octopus Cloud, for example, which supports client billing. If you have your own scripts, one thing that is most important for your scripts is don't trust scripts that measure one single thing that is predefined. Your scripts, your own data gathering solution, must protect you from human error. Let me give you an example. If you have a client with a specific security group through which you provide access to Microsoft Office, for example, have a script that enumerates all the security groups, not only that one that you designated to be the group that you want to use, because people make mistakes. They add other groups to the remote desktop service access. And then you will build the client based on your design designated configuration. But during an audit, it will be discovered that more people had access and you had to pay more. You're going to have a sorry face. We want to avoid that. But having a tool is great. You won't necessarily have to provide, and you won't necessarily want to provide data from your tool, depending on whether you trust it or you don't trust it. But it's good to have it in any case. How does it help to prevent an audit? I will open it with the following statement. Microsoft, when they conduct an audit, they invest in that audit. They pay to an auditor about $30,000 to $50,000 for a simple audit. The longer the audit is, the more the auditor fees will be. And they want return on investment. They want return on that money, on the internal resource, on all the hurdles, sending the emails, chasing, following, project managing. They want return on investment. If they realize that you manage your estate properly, and there are telltale signs. For example, one of the red flags for Microsoft is if you report exactly the same numbers each month, that's a red flag. That means that you don't manage it. Environments are not static. I've never seen a static environment. If there's a static figure in reporting, something isn't right. So you're a potential client for an audit. There's no guarantee. But the other thing you may try is, for example, when they send you an audit notice, you go back and say, can we please avoid this? And you have a conversation. So normally you wouldn't be able to. An audit is an audit. They started it, they wanted to be finished. But if you give them a compelling story, tell them that, for example, you work with a partner that helps you manage SPLA. If it's a well-known partner in the SPLA world, basically say, please come, waste your time. Then you have a chance to cancel the audit. And then even if they continue it, but you are fully prepared, and by the end of that audit, your penalty is like, recently we had one example, €1,000. Then Microsoft, not you, Microsoft then pays to the auditor. They wasted their time, they wasted their money, they won't come back. At least you have one more or less easy exercise. And next time you will not be on the list. They will not want to waste their money again. Daryl, do you want to add a couple of words?
Absolutely. I want to just emphasize that there's always a risk of an audit. The audit risk is low. There's no risk that an audit's going to be knocking on your door tomorrow morning. Microsoft audits on a standard recurring basis every 3 to 4 years. And we have customers that have never been audited. So again, the risk is not an equal risk throughout the community. Yet saying that, and it's important for me to say that because I always like to emphasize this is an open conversation, that our business is not audit protection. One of our services is audit protection. Our business is to enable businesses to grow and prosper. One of the elements of that is, as Alex pointed out, is to be prepared if an audit happens. Again, the risk is very low. Yet there's a byproduct of being prepared for an audit, is that you're getting your house in order. And that doesn't only mean that you're compliant. Again, compliance is a byproduct of doing business. It's not the end game. The ultimate bottom line is, how do you as a business increase profitability? By having your house in order, you are in a position to recognize potential opportunities of unbilled Microsoft software that you are delivering to your end customer and you are not billing for. We see this time after time during an audit process where we go through the entire process of understanding the reporting to billing, to end customer billing cycle, and we identify that software that's being used or being reported to Microsoft is inaccurately or not at all being billed/invoiced to the end customer, meaning that you are losing top line revenue. So going back to, yes, there's a risk. Yes, it is low. Yes, you still need to be prepared because that's the price of governance and good business and regulations and adhering to your T's and C's of your contract. But the end goal is, this is a way to recognize and identify additional potential top line revenue opportunities for your business. And if that isn't a driver to implement right or good governance, then I don't know what is. So from my perspective, what I would hope that you take away from this is, yes, there's best practices. Yes, everything that Alex said is super important, but it's not for the audit, potential audit that might happen. It is to mitigate the risk, but it's more for tomorrow morning to have a straight impact on your business. And this is where you will shine as business professionals within your organization, because now you're not only delivering operational excellence, you are delivering top line additional dollars to the company. And ultimately, that's what a company is all about. That's my 2 bits on this excellent presentation. And Alex, thank you for just bringing me in for the last comment.
Thank you, Daryl. For those of you who don't know Daryl, he's my business partner. He's a co-founder in SAMexpert, where we manage Microsoft relationship for our clients. We don't sell licenses to maintain impartiality in our advice. We don't depend on Microsoft. We don't care what they sell. We care what you spend. We care about your bottom and top lines. And by the way, follow Daryl, please, if you don't yet, because Daryl runs his own events, and next week he's going to have one as well on Wednesday. Daryl is our Chief Negotiation Officer. He wrote a book called Negotiating with Microsoft, and he has his own negotiation masterclass. And in our company, he's the last line of defense against Microsoft in audits as well. So I'm responsible for audit preparations and audit defense. He is responsible for negotiating the outcomes with Microsoft. He's a very interesting lecturer, so I suggest you come to his events as well. We'll have another SPLA event, which will start our new series of SPLA events where we will not talk about audits. We will only be talking about licensing design and profitability of various services like SaaS, IaaS, the hurdles, the licensing models, discussions around whether you should switch to CSP hosting or stay with SPLA, how you mix them, what's the economics of it. So if you are more on the day-to-day management side, I think you'll find those events more interesting to you than the scary topic of audits. I hope to see you there. And thanks very much again. And as always, I hope you learned something useful today. By the way, I remind you, if you want the SPLA Audit Readiness Checklist, drop us an email to ask@samexpert.com, and then I'll respond to you with the attachment and maybe a few words of advice. Thank you. Have a great evening. And for those of you who are in the United States of America, have a great day. Bye-bye.